We're live.
We're live and welcome. Hey, Mike, we're live.
Are we
live? We are live.
Wow.
We are live. We are live on the Booze Dancing Entertainment Network. What we watch, when we drink, and we've got a special one tonight, don't we, guys?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Now, the last two were more movie, less booze, and both guests last name with a Z.
That's
this
right.
time,
No Z's.
no Z's, more booze, less movie.
That's right.
I'm in.
So
Okay.
we are very lucky to have a couple interesting guests tonight. One that we met a long time ago, one that we met a few months ago, and they actually work for the same company, which is perfect.
Excellent.
Excellent.
All right.
So let's start the show.
All right,
roll the intro, and then we'll come back and start chatting.
Right.
Welcome to What We Watch When We Drink, a Booze Dancing Entertainment Network podcast featuring lively discussions about movies, TV shows, and anything else that we're watching while we drink our favorite boozy beverages. If you enjoy this show, please subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, Audible, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. You can also find us on boozdancing.com, and if you have any questions, comments, show or drink suggestions, email us at boozdancing@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
And we are back. Welcome to all that are out there watching on where are we on YouTube and our website, boozdancing.com, and Facebook, and where else? Twitter. Where else can you see this thing?
LinkedIn.
Right. Yeah, where you post your resume and you can watch a video of us.
Exactly.
And Disney. I saw Disney.
And well,
soon. I wish. We're working on that show. We're working on that.
So we are very lucky tonight to have two fellows from the Barrel Craft Spirits Company. We are welcoming in founder Joe Beatrice and Tripp Stimson, the chief whiskey scientist from Barrel. Guys, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to
Thanks
be
for
here.
having
Welcome.
us.
Welcome.
Now we met Tripp about and we met him about 2 months ago.
Yes.
In New York City at the Kiddish Fest Whiskey Festival. And that's how we got together. And then we met Joe about 10 years ago. We were discussing earlier inside of Park Avenue Liquors. The three of us were there, and we happened to see Joe at the very beginnings of this company, right, Joe? And he was selling his wares.
What the hell is that?
Yes, pretty much.
It was so we were just talking about how it was the old Park
The old location.
Park
It was
Avenue Liquors, yeah.
and it was like the old small tiny location, crowded. It was you had to stand like this, and
Yeah.
it was the good old days.
Yes. You were pouring samples and trying to drum up some new business for your new company at the time, right?
Yeah.
So before we get too far along into our evening, we are going to be tasting some whiskeys that the guys at Barrel had sent along to us, some of their expressions. And we're going to be talking about a movie that they picked out for us, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation from 1989. So before we get to the movie, and before we even start tasting some whiskey, well, we could taste some whiskey first. Should we do that first?
Yeah, let's do that.
So
A little history, a little whiskey. It's all good.
Yeah, well, and we're gonna let you guys talk a little bit about Barrel and how you guys started, and what you guys do, philosophy, and where you are right now. So you said to pour that bourbon first, right?
Well, there's two.
Yeah.
Which one?
Batch 35, 6-year-old, 117.5.
Was that it?
That's it.
Is that all?
That's it.
Is that all?
It looks like this. Can you guys see that one? It's got the black label on it. That's one. All right.
Right there.
And there's the bottle, which I have to say, those bottles are really sexy.
They did. They're like nice little flasks.
Oh my God,
They
they're
were
awesome.
nicely packaged, by the way. Excellent job on the seals.
Well
No
done.
spillage.
Oh my God.
Beautiful
Just like
done.
the owner.
Spillage.
So before we go too far, we got to say a little cheers to everybody.
Well, let's pour.
Thanks for dropping in. Thanks for coming on the show. And thanks for watching at home, you guys. Cheers.
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 Excellent.
All right. So before we get into the history of Barrel, Joe, What are we drinking here?
Tripp, you want to talk about it? Or?
Yeah. So what we have for you guys tonight is the first sample is our batch 35. It says 6 on the bottle. Obviously, we have to put the youngest age on the bottle. But this is a blend of whiskeys aged from 6, 7, 8, and 13-year-old from 3 different states, Indiana, Tennessee, and Kentucky. And something that we're doing a little different now. A lot of times when we talk about mash bills, we can't just give a straight on answer to the mash bill because we use so many different mash bills from so many different states. And so the customer is very interested in the amount of grain that ends up in these blends and how that affects the flavor. So what we've done is started doing a derived mash bill where based on the volume of each of the mash bills, the grains included are calculated by percentage. Oh. So in batch 35, what we're going to have is a 78% corn, an 18% rye, and a 4% malted barley.
So it's just an average of all the numbers of all the different barrels you put together.
Correct.
Well, it's weighted based on the volume.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is something that people were asking for, and we've always been as transparent as we can be, and so we thought this would be the next best thing to start revealing, which is because we always get that question, what's the mash bill? And it's like there isn't one, but it's this. So now so we're spending more time on we're also giving more emphasis on the ages and the states that are in the particular blend, because at the heart of it, we are blenders. That's what we started with. That's what we've been doing for the last 10 years, and that's our superpower.
So when you said the word transparent, that's your superpower. And on the newest Marvel episode,
you know what? When someone asks you the mash bill, just say delicious. That's all.
It's still.
Don't worry about it.
I like that.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Forget about it.
So
when you said transparent, and I was doing some little research on you guys, and we know of you from on for a while now. My first thought was don't get mad. Maybe this is good. Maybe this is bad. You're an American version, not similar to Compass Box. You are trying to come up with expressions by putting lots of things together.
Yeah, I mean, historically, it's a merchant whiskey business in Scotland. I mean, we talk about that a bit. That's we borrowed from that model, and it's highly respected. And it was not really done with American whiskeys when we started doing it. But yeah, I mean, we definitely were influenced and inspired by that.
So how did you come up with the idea, Joe? It was like 10, 12 years ago, right? So where did this idea come up instead of becoming a distillery first?
So the whole thing started. So my background is in the digital realm and in also traditional advertising, and so I started a company that was in the middle of the Silicon Valley boom in the 90s and 2000s, and along the way I had a spirits vertical, and so we did a lot of work with different brands, and I came to Kentucky, a long time ago, and fell in love with the state, and so so at one point, it'll be 12 years ago in November, my wife and I were at this chance, went to a distillery to visit it and just look at it, and I'm standing there going, in the same way that I got into the internet early, this is what we need to do next. We need a distillery. And so I went home and I locked myself away, and it took about literally 7 days to come to the conclusion that we do not want to build a distillery. The investment is crazy. It was just me in my bedroom when I started, and I knew I didn't have the expertise until I met Tripp. Then, and I knew that the way to go was the value was in the brand and creating a product that was superior. And so then it was literally one year from that moment to when we bottled the first product, and the rest is history. And then I met Tripp. Then he met Tripp. Yeah.
And I always love this part of the history of our story, because when I first met Joe, I had spent most of my life in sort of the corporate distilling world and worked in lots of larger distilleries on distillery sciences, yeast fermentation, distillation, and in around 2012 saw the craft boom was really starting to take place, and wanted to be a part of that, leverage my expertise and help people who wanted to get into the industry get a realistic picture of what it really meant to design, build, and operate a distillery. Because I think there's this idea this is some big rosy vacation, sort of, if you build it they will come type of thing, and it is nothing could be further from the truth. And so in my consulting journey would talk a lot of people out of building the distillery and toward building the brand, because the brand is where the value was. So it was really great. The first synergy that Joe and I had was when we first met and started talking about building a distillery. He figured it out. He says, yeah, I wanted to do that for about a week, and decided that was not what I needed to do. And I'm thinking, this guy's done his homework. So he really knows what's going on. And so we really started talking about building a brand, what that looks like, how to set us apart, and how to focus on putting the flavor in the bottle where the consumer is really going to have access.
So instead of making your own product, you're sourcing it from other people, right? So in the beginning, and even now, it's 10 years or so, right? How much harder or easier is it now to get casks to make the things that you want to make?
There is and always has been so much whiskey out there. And now more than ever, because all the production facilities that came online 5 years ago, especially Kentucky bourbon, there was massive amounts of Kentucky bourbon. But we've been lucky. We've had good relationships with a lot of producers, and a lot of it comes from that there's a respect for the product and how we use their products. And so everything to us is an ingredient into making a blend. And when I met Tripp, that was we hit it off, and similar philosophies, and also our palates were so compatible because we like the same things, we dislike the same things, but we also know we have different fault sets that we detect, which is really sort of, you think about it. So what we're doing is we know what we shouldn't be in there. And there are some things that my palate is really sensitive to, and some things that Tripp's palate is sensitive to. And so that's.
So I'm guessing you're getting a bazillion samples from all these, wherever you're sourcing. You're trying these samples, and Joe, when you taste a sample, that's Tripp's not going to like it. And Tripp, when you taste a sample, Joe's not going to like it.
I was just getting ready to go there, because that's exactly the way this happens.
Yeah.
Is that we'll be sitting there tasting all these samples, and Joe will go, well, I know which one you like. I was like, well, I know which one you don't like. and so that's how those conversations happen. And then more often than not, we're right.
Ange?
Yeah, one question. When you are getting ready to release a batch, do you kind of have an idea where you want to go, or do you base where you're going to go based upon what you're getting from the distilleries?
I think
you already have a concept, or?
I think we do sort of have a concept, and the way I explain this is it's kind of a Cliff's Notes version of this, because we deal with these barrels all the time. So these different mash bills have sort of a bucket of characteristics that we're very familiar with. So we can speak about these mash bills in lots of barrels, and sort of that's code for what we know to be the flavor profiles of these mash bills. Okay. So we'll speak in terms of like bulk mash bills, which is really concentrated amounts of flavor to build what we would call a base blend. And then once we have the base blend put together, it's about filling in gaps in the flavor profile.
Okay, so you kind of have an idea of what you want to do.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's just a question of getting the right component to make it where you want it to go.
Yeah, we also know a lot about how they'll blend together.
Right.
And it's funny because we're moving to a new space, which we can talk about later, and we're going through all of our old sample bottles, and we have a palette of sample bottles that we have a library, but even with the library, we have that many more samples. And so, the other part of it is what we do is real art and science. To put together a matrix of there's about 300 different combinations when we did our toasted barrel experiment, from different kinds of wood, different age wood, different season length of time on the wood, different age product that went in there, different mash bills. So we know really what every whiskey that we have access to, how it reacts in any kind of toasted barrel.
When you get a sample, does this kind of thing happen? You taste a sample and you go, oh, this would work great with that sample 6B up on that shelf over there, that barrel. I think these two things will go together.
I wish it was. It's close to that.
It can be something like that. More often than not, it becomes the defining piece of a matrix component that we have set aside, where we know that there's a component that we want to use as a part of a batch, but we know that it's missing something. And so when we taste through some of these samples, it's kind of like, that's the missing piece, and we know where that piece fits in the puzzle.
Wow, it's fascinating. So you said you're moving to a new location. You got a rick house, so you must have a lot of barrels. I don't want to ask you how many, but you must have a lot of barrels sitting there waiting to be blended.
Yeah, Tripp can speak to the rick house because he loves that place. We've spent so much time in rick houses, and it's so funny. Tripp, I came across some pictures of when we were out one time. We spent a day. We were filthy. We spent a day crawling around, taking samples out of our barrels, and you just are immersed in this unbelievable environment. But what we've done is we're slowly moving in our barrels because we have them all over the country, and we're filling up this rick house. But we're trying to do it in a thoughtful way. But you can speak to the rick house because this is really cool.
Yeah, these rick houses are really a cool place to be, and if you've never been in one and you're listening to this, I encourage you to go see one, preferably a historic one, because they're just incredibly fascinating the way they build these things. And the one that we purchased was actually built in 1940 by the Dant family. It was one of the original Yellowstone warehouses in Shively, Kentucky. It was one of 6 that were down on that 10-acre plot, and we own the only one that's left. It's
Cool.
it's 5 floors. It has 42 ricks per floor, and there's 3 rails per rick, so we can store about 18,000 barrels in there. And it's
amazing.
There's a couple of old foundations that are actually still on the property too. So if we ever wanted to build a couple more of them, we've already got the foundations in place to re-erect the structure. So it's a really, really neat piece of history.
I mean, the other thing that fascinates me about this place is the wood. It's a different wood because it was so dense. When you look at this wood and you look at wood that's being used now to build, I mean, structurally it's very different. So there's something really amazing about this, about the way this is constructed. Also, it was constructed for people who are about this wide to get between the legs. People were smaller then, I think.
Yes, and shorter.
And shorter. And then the other thing about this place, which I am really fascinated by, is there's a natural ventilation. Air circulation is critical in barrel maturation, and which is why ricks are very different from palletized storage. And so underneath the first floor are these big cavern tunnels that connect to the outside that they use to bring air from the outside and circulate the air through. It's sort of like the way that Washington buildings were built to create a kind of air conditioning when they were first built, which was they used the natural convection of air to move airflow to move through. So there's a lot of nuance to that place, but it's
an interesting science from hundreds of years ago, really.
Yeah.
An interesting design technique.
So you don't just build a barn and throw a bunch of barrels in there.
You can.
There's a little more involved. Well,
Yeah.
but there's a little more involved.
Yeah.
Okay.
especially because you have so much heat there in
Oh, that's true.
in
Yeah.
Kentucky, right?
Heat
Yep.
and humidity. Let's not forget
And humidity.
Yeah.
All right, so gents, what did you guys think of this bourbon?
That is
It
really,
was
really nice.
so freaking easy drinking.
I
Oh
was
my
surprised it wasn't that hot.
Yeah,
No.
That when you see the number on the bottle, you think this might have a lot of heat to it, but it was easy drinking. You know, I look at some of the high ABVs and you think it's almost like a dare, and it seems as if they instead that's just the right temperature it had to come out at. You had to put it at it's the right number.
it's
At
perfect.
80 proof, it would have been water.
Yeah.
It's just really good.
What I'm amazed, it's actually, I find it kind of light, but it's like light and fruity. It's not
Yeah.
heavily oaked.
Yeah.
It's not like really astringent. It's got like a nice light fruity quality to it,
It's delicious.
you know, and it's hot in the beginning, but then once you adjust to it, it's not like an oppressive heat. It's just
Yeah.
saying I'm 117 proof.
Yeah.
So
I mean, one of the things that we do design into, so we spend a lot. It can take 100 iterations, even more, sometimes to perfect where we want to be. And we do everything blind. So we taste everything blind, and we back test everything against our products and against competitive products all the time. And so we know exactly where we want to be. And so part of the experience for us is that we want it to be complete. There should be the nose is important, the color is important, the first sip when it hits your palate, how it affects the side, back, everything. And so our whiskeys, you'll see that they affect your palate differently. If we were drinking Vantage tonight, that's back palate forward. So that really is expressed there and at the very beginning. This is different. This is a whole different experience. And you got it. So, and we wanted to have a long finish.
Yeah.
And it has that for sure.
Yeah, it's good.
A friend of ours from Canada, you guys may know her, with the Whiskey Lassie, Joanne McGinnis, is online with us tonight, and she has a question. She says, do they use mass spectrometry to fingerprint their barrels? That's a good question.
It is a good question.
And she's a chemical engineer, so she'd ask that kind of question.
And in a perfect world, I think it would be fun to do that. I've had quite a bit of experience with some mass spec and HPLC and GC to do similar things, but we don't have that luxury currently to take advantage of that technology. And one thing that I would also argue, not necessarily against it, but for not using it for sort of this type of blending, is because when we're putting together these blends, we're really looking at this liquid in the same way that the consumer is going to be experiencing the liquid. And so by doing it all by taste, we're stepping through the process that the consumer is going to go through when they taste the final product. If we were to use some sort of piece of equipment, spectrometry or HPLC, mass specs, so on, to do this type of analysis, it would benefit us if we were doing some sort of experimentation where we're looking at different pieces of the puzzle, like barrel contribution to a certain type of liquid, or maybe certain types of congener formation in a certain area of our rick house, those types of things that would allow us to control and gather data and then leverage that data into something. But since we're not focused quite in that area, it's more about how the consumer is going to experience the product. We try to do it all by taste.
Ange, what you got?
just so you know, I have access to one at work, and
Really?
I know the guy that runs it, so we can negotiate a rate, a little road trip, have a little dinner. It could be fun. So anyway,
There you go.
Could be interesting.
and the former person that ran the whole thing, big bourbon fan. So
Ooh, look at
I can
that.
get her on board too. So
There we
anyway,
go.
that's all. That's all I had to say.
Well, we've talked a little bit about the little bourbon, little barrel here, and now we're going to talk a little bit about a movie. Now, you guys, we went through some emails back and forth about a movie to pick to talk about tonight, and we were all over the place. John Wick and Fast and Furious, I think, was in there, and we ended up totally out in left field. National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Now,
Well, it was either this or Spice Girls.
or spice. I don't remember that on the email, but okay. So why? You guys told us on the email, but how did you guys come up with this movie? Why is maybe the bigger question.
It
Tripp?
so
this was yours, I think.
it was so we did. We went from John Wick to Fast and Furious and went through a bunch of action flicks, and it's been so miserably hot in Kentucky for the last few weeks. It's like everybody needs a little Christmas in July with the email or on August
Good.
right now. So
This is good.
So I thought it would be a good one. Maybe bring a little cooler temperatures with it, and there are so many great quotes from this movie. You can't help but love it.
It's funny. It's on all the time, and I
Yeah,
don't
it really
think
is.
I even think of it as a Christmas movie because it's not on in December. It's on in the other 11 months of the year, endlessly.
It's almost the perfect movie. There's, it really is practically a remake of It's a Wonderful Life, but it also gets really dark in there, and it's the characters are just bigger than life, and we love it. We love the movie.
So this came out in 1989. It's the third vacation movie from National Lampoon. And we'll give you a little bit of background on this. So it's based on a short story that John Hughes wrote for National Lampoon. He was a senior editor at National Lampoon back in the 70s and 70s and 80s. And he started with an article called Vacation. That was in 1979. He wrote that. That became Vacation ultimately when the movie was made. But it was told from the point of view of Rusty, not from Clark. He writes another one called Christmas 59, supposed to be 1959, and it's also told from the point of view of Rusty. And both of these stories are very dark, much darker than these comedies that we see today. But you can see the underpinnings of what these movies will be from the characters. But Clark is not exactly the same Clark. It's not Chevy Chase in these original writings, and John Hughes is an executive. He's a producer on both of these movies too, I believe, right? On both of them, and all three of the first three, I think. And do you have any details on the movie itself? Some numbers and stuff.
Release date December 1st, 1989. Budget $28 million. Gross box office USA and Canada 74.5. So I guess by definition that's like a moneymaker. That's pretty good.
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah. IMDb score 7.5 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes 70%. Metascore 49. So filming locations, they said Chicago, but when I read some of the stuff,
I thought it was Colorado. Some of it was Colorado.
The one scene was in Breckenridge. I was reading.
Oh, they're looking for
when
the
they went and
tree.
got the Christmas tree.
Right.
They actually, I think, had to bring in snow for it because they had no snowfall. But the house and the neighborhood and all that was all done, I think, wherever the studios are. Glendale, maybe.
Oh, it was in Burbank, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, Burbank, one of those. They were all done. Yeah. It was all done on set. But the Chicago shots are all real, down in the loop and down and all that stuff. So I don't know what else you want to know.
Directed by
Jeremiah Chekich or Chekich
career.
And written by John Hughes, as you said. Apparently, Chris Columbus was the original director on this, but he couldn't stand working with Chevy Chase, so he quit.
That probably never happens, huh?
No. I guess he really is a bastard. I don't know. He's got a bad rep.
Yeah, now they just get rid of Chevy. They don't get rid of the director.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Matty Simmons was an executive producer. Not he's on the credits, but he's not. It's hard to find him. Matty Simmons was the CEO of National Lampoon right before they started having all their financial problems in the 70s, 80s. Interesting with Matty Simmons, he was the CEO, head of marketing for Diners Club, the very first credit card. And these guys had this idea, and I think they were on Long Island for this Diners Club charge card, and they had no idea what this was. They had this concept, they didn't really know what to do with it. And then he came in and said, okay, we have to flesh this idea out. And they were the first, and they started marketing a credit card. That was after he left National Lampoon, and then before he went to National Lampoon, and then he became a big movie producer. And the music, this is stunning to me, was Angelo Badalamenti.
I know, I saw that.
Famous for lots of things like Twin
David
Peaks.
Lynch movies. Yeah.
David Lynch movies. And there's no soundtrack to this movie. You can't buy a soundtrack to this movie. It doesn't exist. Isn't that weird?
Interesting.
All right. So this movie is crazy. It's a crazy Christmas movie, a feel-good Christmas movie about Clark. What's Clark's last name? Griswold. Griswold trying to make the perfect Christmas for his family. So he has all the extended family come to their house. Let's have the big Christmas tree. Let's have all the lights. Let's have all the beautiful things about Christmas. And of course, everything goes wrong. And he tries his best and nothing goes right. And I think that's the short story of it all.
So basically Christmas.
Basically Christmas for everybody,
basically Christmas, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
Joe, Tripp, thoughts on the movie?
Great. It's just, I mean, it's just. I'm sitting here thinking through all the quotes that that we can rattle off and where to start.
I think,
rattle off a few if you like.
I think it's, you have, for me, there's all these little character sketches, like Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who she's just brilliant, and they play the next door neighbors, and do we even call anybody yuppies anymore? I mean,
they were yuppies.
Sure.
Yeah, they were yuppies.
That was the appropriate label for that time.
No, yeah, it was. Yeah.
And they're just so awful.
They hate their next door neighbors, and then they're harassed by their next door neighbors indirectly, and they are just so put off by them. They're just part of the nothing goes right Christmas.
Well, here's one of the quotes.
Offended by everything.
Here's one of the quotes. Ellen, I don't remember who Ellen was. I don't know what to say except it's Christmas and we're all in misery.
Isn't that Christmas?
That's the
That's
wife.
Christmas, right?
The wife is Ellen.
I always liked it at the very.
Oh, it's
at
the
very
wife? Okay.
beginning. At the very
Honestly,
beginning with
to be honest, I've seen bits and pieces of it over the years, but I've never actually sat through the entire film from start to finish.
That quote is she's talking to her daughter, who is
Julia, whatever.
and
Lewis.
that was something. But also, I mean, you can't ignore Cousin Eddie. I mean,
Well, Mr. Quaid is an interesting person.
Is there a better character in any movie than that guy?
He was born for this part, and now he's living in a trailer for this part somewhere. A funny part of the vacation movies is that the kids are never the same actors in any movie.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's a reason for that, because they want Chevy because Chevy doesn't know their names all the time, right? He's kind of like unclear who these kids are. Well, he's really unclear because there's a different person playing them every time. That was a kind of just to magnify that issue for the family. Yes. Which I still liked Rusty in the first movie, which was Anthony Michael Hall.
I kind of like Johnny Galecki, though. I thought he was pretty good.
He was good, but he was
What's great is there are four of them that play Rusty, and three of them have long careers.
Yes.
And the fourth one is Ryan Reynolds' brother-in-law.
So it's Ryan Reynolds' brother-in-law.
I'm not sure who made it better.
That's a good.
Jason Lively plays the Rusty character in the European Vacation.
Oh, that's funny.
And Blake Lively's his sister. So you're like, okay, I don't know who made out better. You get to hang out with Deadpool, or you're still on TV. I'm not sure.
With all that gin money.
Yeah, I don't know.
He's got gin and Mint Mobile
you're
money.
at the Wrexham. Maybe something's going on.
Some money. Yeah. Unsung hero is Beverly D'Angelo. She's great.
Oh, she's great in everything she's in.
She is. She's great, and she's so good as this wife she wants what Clark wants, but she knows it's not going to work out. So she tries to stop him at every turn, and it doesn't matter. It still falls apart.
And she's so deadpan as everything's falling apart around her.
So deadpan.
Where it's just like, what's the next thing that Clark did that was just stupid? Okay, whatever.
Or think about Brian Doyle Murray.
The great Brian Doyle Murray. The great Brian Doyle Murray.
Did I say it right?
Brian Doyle Murray.
I mean, just as like out of central casting for the worst CEO on the planet. Every single thing that guy does is,
So Joe, you don't run your company like that? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, it's just like
the one quote. Remember when I was toying with
Yeah,
that
Tripp looks
idea of
happy.
suspending the Christmas bonuses? Like, who does that? Who's toying with the idea?
Brian reprising his role as the head of the caddies from Caddyshack. But pretty much the same guy.
He's good like that.
What I can't get over in that is William Hickey.
I love William Hickey.
And
He's great.
how old do you think he is in that movie?
I don't know, 82.
He's
old.
like he's in his early 60s.
Whoa.
Of course he is.
He's younger than all the other parents.
That's so
And he's supposed to be
funny.
playing like the great uncle because he just looks like, he's
Yeah.
City Miles. That
Oh,
guy
wait,
just looks
how
old.
old did you say he is?
He's in his 60s in the movie.
In the movie.
Really?
Yeah,
Because
wow.
wasn't Prizzi's honor around the same time?
Yeah.
Because he
It was
played
before.
John Corrado
before.
Prizzi,
Yeah.
right? That's
It's-
funny.
It's an
He's
amazing
cool.
little.
He's born in 1927. The next
Yeah.
closest person to him is Doris Robertson in 25.
Jeez.
And the two fathers are both in the teens, 1914, 1915. Well, you think he's got to be like 1900. The guy's, he's got to be
Yeah.
he's being made. He's 60. He's 62 years old.
And his voice is so ridiculous, but he's
Oh.
just so memorable.
John Randolph, Diane Ladd, E.G. Marshall, Doris
And
Roberts.
Doris Roberts.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy casting. They said yes to this. All four of them.
And I love how the in-laws to Clark are like typical in-laws. Like,
Yes.
I noticed the twinkle lights aren't on. His lights aren't twinkling. And his father is just like I've already done this horrible thing. Like, oh, well, okay. Life is beating you down. Welcome to my world. Kind of John Randall's character is great.
Oh my gosh. Well, before we go much farther, let's try this rye. I want to try the rye.
Do we
I
want to
want
do
to
the
ask
ride?
one question about the batches. Do you try to make the batches similar to one another, or are they totally different expressions?
They're intentionally different.
Intentionally different. Okay.
Nice.
Just didn't know if with the bourbon you're trying to hit like a certain kind of bourbon, or if you're just coming out each time like this is this year's bourbon. Enjoy.
Joe and Tripp,
Next
did you
batch
want
will
us
be
to
something
go?
new.
Did you want to go bourbon rye back to bourbon, or how did you want to do this?
We
Yeah,
should do the
really.
ride now.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Because the Amber is going to be too much.
Okay.
Now the first the bourbon was Kentucky, Tennessee, Indiana.
Correct.
Is this the same blends
You mean is the ride the same state?
for the rye? Same distillers.
So no, there's going to be
Right.
some different distillers here in the rye. This is going to be a blend of Indiana ryes that are 5, 6, and 10 years old, a Tennessee rye that's 5 years old, a Kentucky rye that is 6 years old, and a Canadian rye that is 14 years old.
Ooh, Joanne, there's a
Steve.
14-year-old Canadian whiskey in here.
Rolling in that
Oh,
Canadian
That,
swill.
Joanne, just for you.
And then we have our derived mash bill of 89% rye, 7% corn, and 4% malted barley.
Wow,
Oh,
Nice.
okay.
that's a lot of rye.
So one of the things in the way rye presents is there is a massive difference between a 51% rye mash bill and a 95% rye mash, or even 99% rye mash bill. I mean, they're just each one is a
Apples and
totally
oranges.
different product. I haven't had this in a while.
Yeah, and if you guys have been following us for a while too, you'll notice that there's been a little bit of time between our rye batch 3 and rye batch 4, and that's because we are constantly looking for something that is worthy to go into that package. And ryes, we like to blend something that is a little more than just your typical spice bomb, and then it sort of just trails off into nothingness. We like to have a well-rounded product, just like with our bourbons, where you do get that traditional spicy rye grain, but you're also going to get some fruit notes. You're going to get, there's some herbal dryness in there. So you're touching all parts of your palate. You're getting a good bit on the front of the palate with a nice finish. You get good mouthfeel coverage over your tongue. I mean, it's just an all-around great product.
So this one's about a couple ticks less than the first one's, about 57, 58%. This one touches hotter to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Maybe it's the rye that spice
That sharpness. Yeah.
Yeah.
sharpness, right?
Now, do you source from the different states, the different locations, and the age bits to fill, like you said, to fill out those pieces. Like you're tasting something and you're like, that we need to find something that maybe is a little bit older or a little more fruity or a little more whatever as you're going through. Like you're just slotting in the pieces to say this is what's missing right now. I bet if we had something that was 14 years in Canadian, it would be great.
Yeah, it's a great question, Mike, and you're really spot on with that, because in these different distilleries using different yeast strains and different grain bills, we're going to generate different flavor profiles. Yeah. So what we've done over the years is familiarize ourselves with what these flavor profiles are, and so we can target them at different years, because we have a pretty good idea of what we're going to get from these larger distilleries, because they're very consistent with what they produce.
Ooh. Well, that's really nice.
I like it.
I like it too.
I like the spiciness.
I'm not a big fan of rye because I find them to be spice bombs. You've really hit it here.
I like
it's really well rounded, and it's a really nice finish.
And again, with this one, I'm not getting it's not heavily oaked. It's not like overly dry. It's
right.
You get a little more nuance, a little more of the flavors. Some herbal notes, some fruit. It's good.
What we're trying to bring to it is rye can be. Somebody once referred to bourbon as a symphony and rye as a one instrument, and rye can be one dimensional. And so we're very conscious of not producing something like that, of focusing on creating something that has a lot of different characteristics. I mean, the floral notes on this to me are just really interesting because they're sort of at the top. And then you got things like olive and mint in there. Really, the black olive thing it's not
definitely the mint.
You can definitely but and it's there's also a bit of I think the coconut comes through almost with a coconut note with the floral part, but
there's a large wave of American distillers doing single malt now. Have you been sourcing any single malts for future product?
Well, we've been there, done that, and got the T-shirt.
Got it.
we actually produced, I think it was one of the first, if not the first, blends of American malts.
Oh.
And we called it our American vatted malt. And it did extremely well. It's delicious. Bottle around here somewhere. I don't see one here. We did it for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, maybe.
Yeah. Sourced from 8 or 10 different U.S. distillers, and had a lot of fun with that project.
Oh, that should be amazing.
It's an interesting category because it's an amazing product, but there isn't really a classification for it, and it's confusing to American palates because it's not Scotch.
Yeah.
But we really enjoyed it. I actually it's funny because you mentioned Chris Riesbach, who joined our company last year, and I've known Chris for 10 years, and he was instrumental in the growth of Westland.
That's right.
And they make an exceptional product, I think.
Maybe the kings of American single malt, Westland, maybe, right?
There are a lot of really good producers.
There are.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think we'll get that designation from the TTB nailed down probably this year. I think it's going to be finalized.
Yeah.
And that's going to be good. I think it's good to have another product SKU or product category for American drinkers, I think. And formalized, not just hey, we call ourselves a single malt. It's going to have a definition to it.
American blended whiskey is a great category. We do a fair amount in that category. It's really, it's the thing about American blended whiskey is the history of it is such that it was GNS and a little bit of whiskey thrown in. And so the blend was the amount of vodka that was in it.
Right. So, whatever neutral spirit they had.
Yeah. So we produce it's 100% whiskeys. There's
there's no added.
The only GNS we own was for hand sanitizer that we made during COVID.
Yeah.
We were
How much of that do you have laying around?
we have I don't know, a couple hundred gallons still.
Yeah, not too bad.
Yeah, I mean we're not.
It'll keep.
Yeah,
It'll keep.
yeah. Which and that was an interesting thing because Tripp knows far more about it than I do, but it was really interesting to delve into that and see the differences in we started tasting gin at different range of spirit. It's totally, when you start getting up to the super pure refined ones, it's a totally different product
Yes.
than the cheaper ones. But yeah, it's not really our world at all.
Speaking of gin, you guys are into rum now, right?
Have
So
been,
that's a whole different animal than whiskey. So talk about rum for a second. How did you get in? Why did you get into rum? That's so different than
Why not?
Yeah.
why not?
Well, there's a lot of rum shares a lot of characteristics because it's so diverse, and what we really fell in love with were the high ester, really esoteric rums, the super fat rums that are just from the dunder fermentation all the way through, and there's just so like from Guyana and from Jamaica and Barbados and then agricole from St. Martin Martinique is just such an incredibly diverse range. And so I'll tell you a really funny story about this. So we produced our batch 1 rum, which was the only one, and then we reserved some of that rum and then put it in we put some in bourbon barrels because it was what it came in was not super great. And then we thought about what could we do with this rum that was really special. And so we whiteboarded, which we do a lot of concepts, 50 different potential blends. And then we started playing around with them and saying, what would be a good finish for this and what would good finishing cask? And we ended up with a Scotch, an Islay, a famous Islay Scotch barrel.
Holy crap.
With the rum. And that became our Tale of Two Islands product. So it was Jamaica and Scotland. And so that was a very small release, but it was still one of our favorites. So then we have some of those barrels left over. And we actually, this is sort of is kind of for our next product, which is our cask series. You're going to have the first of our new cask series. It's a bourbon finish. The second one is going to be a bourbon finished in Tale of Two Island barrels. Okay, so stay with me for a second here. So it was the original rum that we then put in the Islay casks that we then put bourbon in as a finishing.
Oh,
cask.
wow.
So
it's got a rum influence and a Islay influence to it as well.
Yeah, and so it's not the rum, it's the bourbon in that finish.
That's
So
nutty.
Yeah,
so bourbon with the boot and
rum has been,
the boot and the smoke. That's good.
rum has been such a fascinating category. I mean, we bought some, I don't know, 8, 9, whenever we did years ago, we bought a fair amount of this antique rum, like from the Diamond Still in Guyana, from the Jamaica, and it was 14 years old, I think, at the time. And we bought it, and it just sort of fell off the radar, and it was taking forever to get. And it took almost 2 years to get it delivered to us. And it went staged in the different islands, and went to Rotterdam, and then London, and then
Cruise ship.
and then somewhere on Richmond, I think it was, no, Virginia Beach, I mean, some bizarre place, and we then came over land. So we get the doorbell rings, and there's a guy here. I got your rum, and we look at it, and there's pallets of barrels, wooden barrels. Nobody ships rum in barrels. It all goes in steel because they fall apart.
Yeah, they leak.
You look at it like there's got to be nothing in these barrels, and they were full and intact and spectacular. It was
Wow.
Yeah.
And now you have those barrels to do something else with, right?
Yeah, that's a different project. Anyway, we really digressing on the rum side, but anyway.
Oh, well, it's interesting. I think because there are like you said, there's so many styles of rum all over the world now. It's not just the Caribbean.
Yeah.
that you have so many different, all these palettes to choose from. In your world where you're putting things together to create a new palette, it opens up the world. Whereas
and in defense of rum, so a lot of people say, they're all different because they're not regulated. That's actually not true. They are regulated by the country that they're in. They just have different requirements. So some allow more bricks than others, but it is definitely there is a standard. You might like some more than another, which we do, but they actually do also adhere to some kind of a standard. It isn't just whatever you want. It isn't moonshine.
Yeah. All right, Tripp, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Give me your favorite line from the movie. What's the one you say when you're getting coffee in the office?
I think the funniest one is when Clark walks out of the garage and he has the Jason mask on and he's trying to get the chainsaw fired up, and he finally gets the chainsaw to run. He walks out and it's the neighbors, Margot and I forget the other guy's name, and he looks over at him, fires at the chainsaw, and they look at him and say, "Hey Griswold, where are you going to put a tree that size?"
Oh, funny.
Yeah, but wait, it's the comeback, right? Because he's like, what's he say? I'm gonna bend over and I'll show you.
Bend over and I'll show you.
How dare you talk to me? I wasn't talking to you.
I wasn't talking to you. That's right.
That's the part. That's
right.
How about you, Joe?
Yeah.
What's your go-to line?
It is hands down. It's such an easy one. It's when he falls on the gutter and the giant icicle goes right through the neighbor's picture window, melts. It hits their
TV.
What's
the
that?
stereo system, right?
Yeah, it's like an old Bose looking stereo system.
Yeah.
That was a Bang & Olufsen, I think.
Bang & Olufsen.
Yeah.
And then when they go there, there's a puddle and destroyed, and she's like, "What happened?" And he says, "I don't know, Margot."
Yeah.
That delivery of that line, we actually use that in our family all the time. When our kids are over, or we're having dinner, it's like, "I don't know, Margot." The way he delivers that line is just so good. That's my favorite.
That's really good. Ange, Mike, you got a favorite line?
I always like the worse. How could things get any worse? Take a look around you. We're at the threshold of hell. It's any family function with my family.
That's funny.
I'm one of 7, and if the 5 of us, if the tipping point is 5. If 5 of us get together, usually something goes off the rails, and it is the threshold of hell. It just is.
Welcome to Christmas. Welcome to family gatherings, right? And you got a favorite?
I like when they're going to get the tree, and it's because I put on the little fact sheet. Ellen, Clark, Audrey's frozen from the waist down. Clark, that's all part of the experience, honey. Thanks a lot, Dad. Thanks a lot.
What's funny in the original story is they don't go out to a field to find a tree. They actually go to a Christmas lot, and Clark is too cheap to buy like one of the last trees there. And when they look around some more for a cheaper tree, there's nothing left. They go back to the original tree, which isn't there, and now whatever raggedy tree's left has doubled in price in a half hour. And so they get home, and they have no tree, and the kids are all upset, and his wife is all upset. We don't have a tree, so he takes out a chainsaw and he cuts down one of the pine trees in the front yard, and he brings it in the house. So a little different than the movie, but still crazy. Very funny. We have one last whiskey you guys sent along. Cask Finish Series. I'll let you guys. Amburana?
Yeah.
Is that how you say
Cask Finish. Amburana.
Ooh, Amburana. Is that the type of wood or?
Yes. So it's a Brazilian wood that it's been used in the beer industry and in aging cachaça for a long time. It's also used in like furniture, high-end furniture, and some other things too. But what's really fascinating about this is the amount of flavor contribution that this wood imparts on whiskey. It's absolutely incredible, and it can be so powerful up front with the baking spices and the clove and the cinnamon.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is that what I'm smelling? Is that the wood?
Yeah,
that's like wow.
So this is one of the more concentrated barrel finishes that we've ever played with, and it took us a long time to get to a point where we were actually ready to put this in a bottle because it can be so overwhelming. So we actually spent a lot of time.
Somebody's mic's acting up.
Yeah, somebody's.
Yeah, mine. Let me see what's mine.
It's always an Aaron.
It's always me. It's always mine.
Look at that. Aaron leaves, and now there's no more problems.
All better.
His family says the same thing.
I know. That's
as usual.
So with Amburana, we actually spent a lot of time seeing how the different whiskeys, mash bills, ages from the different distilleries that we like to use, how those whiskeys would interact with this wood over time and start putting smaller blends together, because this thing is so powerful. So we spent about a year.
Did you? This barrel, is it a barrel that was already pre-made that had something else in it, or you had the barrel made?
So this is
wood.
So Amburana is we have sustainably harvested wood that we sourced through a European cooperage that actually made the staves and raised the barrels for us, so that we could so that we could trace it back to make sure that things were done properly.
So it was virgin.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Got nothing was in there before. Okay.
The funny thing about this we actually have a map of the plot where this was harvested, and the whole process and method that was used. This is really a lot like the Portlandia organic chicken thing. The detail we have on these barrels.
Oh, that's great.
And so I mean, to Tripp's point, this is a barrel that we had made, and so Amburana is a tricky thing to work with, and so it can be, people can use staves, they can use chips, they can use dust, and there's all kinds of different wood products that can go into flavoring a whiskey, but that's not what we do. I mean, this is pure cask finished, and so this product, this is the first release in our cask finish series. So we've done whiskey finishes and rum finishes and rye finishes, and we haven't done any bourbon finishes other than we've used bourbon as a component, but this is the first one that is focused on bourbon with a finish. And so it's the Amburana cask, and this is actually just hitting the market right now. It's a very limited release. We're doing small releases of each of these, and so this is number one. The next one's the Tale of Two Islands release.
So this is 5 years total, and 1 year in Amburana.
So we have to put 5 on the label. It's it's 5, 6, 7, and 10.
I gotcha. It's the minimum is 5. Okay.
Correct.
So what's different is, this is in the same way we did our Vantage, which is a toasted barrel product. In that, there are toasted barrels that the bourbon was matured in, but there's also non-toasted barrels that is in the blend. The same is here, because the Amburana it's so overpowering that it is just it's too much. I mean, it's amazing how concentrated the flavor is. I mean, this stuff always amazes me in terms of, sometimes we have an ingredient that's just the most fractional amount will impact of wine.
So you have the one barrel or multi-barrels, multiple of these kinds of wood. Are you going to reuse them again and see what happens?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. We once we dump it, we'll fill it with something, and then we'll figure out what we do with that later.
Is Amburana one of those woods where it's kind of a hide and seek or seek and find kind of thing, where you put it out like 3 months, not enough, 4 months, not enough, 5 months, too much, 4
One
months a
day.
week, that kind of thing, where you're you think you got to, like any other barreling, you put it in for 6 months or 8 months or a year, but you do that with Amburana and you ruin it because it's just too much. Is that type of thing with this wood?
Different movie,
Yeah.
Mike. Different movie.
You will.
Too much, darling. Too much.
Yeah, Amburana starts to impart character on whiskey very quickly, and you'll have character in a matter of days. In some cases, you could probably use the whiskey in a week to 2 weeks, maybe a month, but it's not something
Wow.
that you want to let sit too long.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
can see that.
there's ways to deal with that, but it's definitely a process.
In fact, we tasted this because we taste everything that we're finishing ongoing all the time. That's why we have thousands of samples that are coming out. We tasted this. I specifically remember after a week, and it was like, whoa.
Wow.
So we really have to watch that one,
Right.
and so we were constantly experimenting with those things all the time. But sometimes we finish things far less than months. It doesn't need to be.
Right. It's ready when it's ready.
That's right.
We'll sell no whiskey before it's time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you went too long, I mean, you could just basically say, you could just, leave the bottle out open. It'll be like potpourri for the house if you go too far. Because it's intense. I mean, it really is intense.
It'd be fine for the Griswold's bathroom, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll tell you, this whiskey that is right from the barrel is magical. But there was no way we were going to put it in a bottle because it would be so polarizing. It would
Right.
just
Right.
I could see that.
Yeah.
Because the flavors are, it says bourbon, but then you get to it and it's like, well, is it really bourbon?
Well,
You've changed it just enough that like a hardcore bourbon dripper might get put off by it.
when we tasted this before we started blending it, I was immediately transported to the when you walk in the mall and there's a Cinnabon right inside there, and you go through the atrium and it's right there. It's like you like your mouth starts watering the second you walk in. That's what that first taste was like.
Hey,
I'm getting the dessert whiskey right with this.
Yeah,
give me
right.
give me a nice panna cotta or a cheesecake, and
You and your panna cotta.
Or cheese. I mean,
I'm like, there are a cheese afterward. Oh yeah.
I would drink
Nice
it
cheese
with a
plate.
liqueur or something like.
Hey, Aaron.
Yes.
So this is what is this again? You said Amburana, right?
Amburana.
So we got Cinnabon, and from there, my head leaped to Cocobolo, going back to like Better Call Saul with the Wild Woods. I was like, okay, I'm all over the place, bouncing all over the place.
We have a question from Sean, who had put this in the chat a little earlier.
Sean Fouché.
I'm not as versed in rye varieties as opposed to barley, Triumph, Optic, Chariot, etc. Are distillers choosing grains based on yield, or are they seeing them give more attention to flavor profile? Good question.
It is a good question, a very good question, and I think both are true. I think there's also a business decision in there. I think people would love to spend as much time as they can experimenting with different types of grains, and whether they're growing or sourcing those grains, but also as you sort of deviate from the typical stuff that's used, those grains are going to get more and more expensive. And then depending on where you get those grains, and if we're specifically speaking about rye, you're going to have to find a colder climate, because the yields in the warmer climates are not going to be near as good as the yields in the cooler climates. And then your varietals within that are going to vary as well. So you've got this dream of being able to play with the infinite flavor profiles, sort of combating with the business decision of how much can I afford to go down that path.
Right. I think that's probably true of wood too. I'm sure this barrel of Amburana was not cheap. You can go crazy with trying to find interesting wood types from all over the world, but at some point it's got to be too expensive for what you might get out of it, right? Versus like a different kind of barley, a purple corn, or something from New Mexico versus something in Colorado versus a rye in Pennsylvania or in on the West Coast. It's got to be a cost issue as well for what you're getting.
We pay far more for our Mizunara barrels than the full barrel of Kentucky bourbon costs.
Oh, I'm sure.
Empty.
Yeah. Yeah.
For an
Wait, you
empty
mean an empty
barrel.
barrel?
Yeah, for
Well,
an
first
empty
of all,
one.
I'm like, there's no whiskey. You don't get they don't throw in the whiskey in this barrel.
You just you're buying flavored air. Flavored air.
But if you've ever seen the tree, then you get it pretty quickly. I mean, I don't know, get one stave out of a tree. I don't know.
It's like we've done some reviews of Delback down in Tucson, and it's all mesquite, and they have so much waste. I mean, that's how their business became a business, because there was so much waste. It's a weird looking mesquite's wood. It's not straight. It's kind of curved. It's going in circles. There's knots. It's all wasteful. Yeah,
what's that whiskey? That's one of my favorite whiskeys. Their mesquite one. It's called
Delback.
The Delback, but there's
Dorado.
Yep.
The Dorado.
the
Dorado.
Dorado.
Yeah.
That's delicious.
Dorado.
That's really
Love
good.
it.
That whiskey
Love
is
it.
outstanding.
Yes, it's a great distillery. I got a bunch of empty barrels of theirs in my backyard, and they smell great on the inside. Yeah, that's really good. Back to the movie. Any other thoughts on it? I go back to my favorite of them all is the first one. It's like the one that sucked me in, and it's the one that's never on TV. Weirdly enough, you never see it. It hardly ever shows up.
It's on HBO Max now, or Max, whatever it's called.
Is it really?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, wait. You know the other great line is Rusty still in the Navy? That has got to be one of that's another one. Is Rusty still in the Navy?
Well, Chevy is so Chevy in all of his movies. He's got that sardonic wit, and he's just a buffoon, and he talks over himself, and he gets himself, he flubs into he's physical comedian, of course. He's like that in every movie. He's the same guy, pretty much.
One of my favorite.
Fletch.
Oh yeah, Fletch.
Yeah. So before this movie,
Funny Farm was another one. I don't know if you guys like that one.
Yes.
It was another Funny Farm.
Funny Farm.
Was another great one.
I still think my favorite scene in this whole movie is when he gets locked in the attic.
Yeah.
and he's freezing, so he's wearing like his mother's fur coat and some kind of turban, and he's watching the old family movies. And you're just like, he finally is figuring out like that's what Christmas is about. It's a disaster. Just watch the movies, and this is the whole thing.
And then the door opens.
And then he falls through.
We didn't talk about Chevy much. He's at Saturday Night Live right in the mid-70s, and he leaves because he wants to be a star, wants to be a movie star, right? And he goes off and does a series of movies that are pretty big hits. Foul Play, Caddyshack, Seems Like Old Times, Vacation, Fletch, European Vacation, Spies Like Us, Three Amigos, Funny Farm, and then a couple bad ones in there. And then he goes to this movie. So he kind of did what he wanted to do. He actually had a string of pretty good numbers there. He became a fixture in American comedy on screen.
Don't you think his signature line in Saturday Night Live, which I am sure that 90% of the people listening to this have no idea what I'm talking about.
I'm Chevy Chase, and you're not.
And you're not.
That's
sort of says it
and
all.
he made, and oddly enough, he wasn't. He made the Weekend Update a thing. Yeah. I'm not sure they ever thought that was going to be an ongoing thing, but today it's still a role.
And they said to Bill Murray, they said, "What's with Chevy Chase?" And they said, when you get this sudden rush of fame, you're like an ass for like 3 years.
Yeah,
and then your family or your friends, they kind of smack it out of you, and you figure out like how to be a person. And he said, and nobody ever did that to Chevy. And he's been like everything every show he's ever on, people are like, it's great working with him, but we don't miss him. He's gone. He was on late in life. He gets on Community, and the cast of Community was like, you sit back and you're like, oh my God, I finally made it. I'm going to work with Chevy Chase. And then you realize, wow, this guy, crap. I don't want to go to work today. He's the worst.
And I think Chevy's kind of come to grips with it, the fact that he's like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He knew he was he came to a late in life realization. I was a jerk for a long time, and it's still with me. It's not going away.
I think he just looks at that's part of his charm.
He just owns it.
I'm Chevy Chase and you're not. That's like,
Yeah,
you know what you're getting.
that's true.
Yeah.
American icon in comedy, yet polarizing in a lot of ways. He never had Bill Murray's career, right? There was always that tug between the two of them, and they battled it out in Caddyshack. And then who has the bigger movie career? Obviously, I think Bill Murray, right?
Well, he's also kind of a crazy individual too. So
That's true. Yes.
Looking to work with him either.
Maybe better movie choices.
But he, the thing that surprised me the most with all of these movies is that I would have thought they were these monstrous box office hits, and they made like $50-60 million, which covered the cost 2 times whatever it cost to make the movie. So they're technically a hit. But I would have, the amount of time you see them on television and everything else, you're like, boy, these must have been huge box office numbers. And you probably made more money selling it to TV than you did in the movie theaters.
Oh, okay. That's still part of it, right? That's part of the business.
Yeah, but it just amazes me. I would have thought these movies made a fortune.
Did you see the Barbie cross the $1 billion
$1 billion
in 3 weeks?
Really?
3 weeks.
$1 billion.
3 weeks.
I went to the movies with my son, and in
You saw Barbie?
I did not go to see Barbie.
Yet.
I can't wait to see it.
And there were
That's
a
not gonna be
ton of
fun.
people in the theater getting their concessions, and they were all dressed in pink because that's apparently a thing you do. And they were running a dual ticket of Barbie and Oppenheimer.
Yeah, Barbenheimer.
I don't understand how that goes together at all.
Sure.
But
Barbenheimer.
Barbenheimer.
5.5 hours of movie. Yeah, that's a lot.
But yeah, it's crazy.
Wow.
Like that's the kind of thing. Like if Barbie makes $1 billion, I would have thought these movies would have been like Caddyshack, making 100 million, 150 million, something like that. And instead, they did $60-70 million tops.
Between Taylor Swift's $1 billion tour and Barbie, it's a girl's world.
Yeah, you know what? Have fun, guys. Have fun, kids. Hey, question for it. One thing. I took the rye. I had poured it up again. I added a good bit of water. So I'm thinking this thing could make a really, really nice highball. With some sparkling water. Very nice. It opens up really nice. You get a lot of the herbal notes, the whole thing.
The best drink is the one you like. Yeah.
Amen.
Well said.
Yeah.
Amen.
Who said that? Did I just make that up?
My favorite whiskey is the one I'm drinking right at the time. Yes.
The important thing is just buy the damn whiskey.
Exactly.
Buy the damn whiskey. So, gents, what's coming up? What's new with Barrel? What's coming up? Anything?
There is a in the fall we're going to go out in a few markets with our first non-cast strength bourbon. It's 100 proof, and it's going to be price point in the mid 50s, and it's called Barrel Foundation. And so we've finished blending it, and it is, well, I'm not allowed to talk about our products like that, but it's good.
Is that going to be something you're going to do? Like it's going to be
ongoing.
like
Yeah, it's going to be an evergreen product that well, it depends. It depends on
sales.
The assumption there is that everybody likes it and buys it.
Right.
And we decided to do that as a way also to bring the barrel experience to other people. I mean, we're consumers too. I mean, $80 for a bottle of whiskey is a lot of money. And we take that seriously. I mean, we're really careful about. I mean, nothing gets in the bottle that we don't think is exceptional. And you may like one more than another, but that's part of our promise to the people. And so because you've all had that experience. I mean, I'm a consumer. If I pay whatever the amount is for a bottle and it's terrible, I'm never going back. And that's just a consumer behavior dynamic, and and I think that it's easy to lose sight of that, but we haven't. And so our focus is that our thinking is it'll allow more people to come in and see what we do, and I mean, look, even at mid 50s, you guys all remember bourbon was $10.
Yeah.
You're growing up.
Yeah.
And that was for a
Well-
premium bottle.
Bourbon is still a great value compared
Yeah.
to Scotch. Bourbon is a great value still in this country. And there is, as you had said, there is a lot of bourbon in a lot of warehouses. And I think we may see prices come down over the next few years because there is so much of it. But it's still a great value. So if you can bring someone into the tent at a lower price point so that they get interested in the Barrel brand, and then, oh, hey, look at all these other cool things you guys do, you bring them in. That's great. That's good.
Yeah,
I'm excited about it.
And I think to a certain extent, the science has finally caught up with the bourbon. That you're not just going out there and trying to make the same thing for everybody for over and over. And it's, let's look at different blending. Let's look at different aging. Let's look at different climates. Let's look at different barrels. Let's do different things like they've done in Scotland for years and other places, just to come up with, we're not going to make the same thing over and over and over again.
No.
And I think to us, you guys certainly hit a sweet spot there with the Aberana. That was really good.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
And
those
for
kinds
me,
of
the
bourbon-
rye, I'm not a big rye fan. The rye you made, I would drink that every day.
Oh,
That's
totally.
a really good rye.
Do the highball, Mike. I'm telling you.
That's a
You'll
really
love it.
good rye.
delicious.
So you're assuming I can make a cocktail. Is that what you're saying?
It's mixing
water.
two things. with
It's
ice.
water.
Easy.
It's whiskey
Two-
water.
Two
Mike, it's
things at
easy.
the same time?
Oh, my God.
Ah,
I'm going
The
to
ice
walk
in
over to your
first.
house and slap you right now.
I told you,
You guys-
if I have to put an ice cube in the glass, I usually drop the ice cube. So I have problems.
And you guys do a really big single barrel program, right? You guys do, because I know I've seen at High Times in California here, they have a really great display of your product. They have their own barrel picks, I believe. I think K&L might as well.
Yeah.
So you guys do a pretty big private barreling program, right?
Well, it's interesting because this single barrel, we consider the single barrel program to include our private releases. And so one of the things that we really like about a private release is over a single barrel is, there's a big demand for single barrels, and we actually select the single barrels, and when we're tasting through barrels, what makes it in the single barrel group is that there's something different about it. Big nose, no nose, long finish, no finish. I mean, we try to mix it up and give people different things to pick from. At the same time, we're not going to cherry pick all the honey barrels out of that and then leave the batches, shortchange our blended products. And so one of the things we found is that we, by doing things like private releases, and our private release bourbon series was based on different percentages of ages, that we're able to do these hundreds of micro blends and give people even more variety than just saying, I mean, at this point in time, pretty much anybody who drinks whiskey knows what a 7-year-old MGP 21% bourbon rye barrel should taste like. There's no real mystery.
We've had a lot of those.
Yeah, right. I mean, and it is one of the greatest bourbons produced. I mean, we use a lot of it. But there's, their production methodology, and this is really Tripp's thing, is their production methodology is so good that they really have consistency. Now we do find variations. I mean, we get, remember the gray barrels we got from MGP? It was like there was a mudslide in their brick house, or I don't know what it was, but they were just like gray slop, and it was. But the whiskey inside was spectacular.
Yeah, but they rolled them across the yard to put them in the truck or something.
Yeah, that was probably what it was.
That sealed the staves better. So
Sealed it in.
the flavor
That's
was
right.
different.
That's
Yeah.
right.
The flavor's different.
Yeah, that helps too, because you do get empty barrels. That does happen.
Yeah,
That's right.
it's a thing.
Yeah,
Gentlemen, this was
drives
a
it apart.
wonderful evening. I know you guys, it's after 10 o'clock back east, and I don't want to keep you guys too late. Great movie to choose from. Really funny. National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. And we can't thank you enough for these wonderful samples. These whiskeys are just delicious. And it's great to meet up with you again, Joe. Not in a little tiny, place. Now we're on little tiny squares. And Tripp, it was great meeting you a few months ago in New York City. And thanks for coming on.
We really
Thanks for
enjoyed
having
it.
us. Yeah, this has been great.
Yeah. Any last vacation thoughts, quotes?
I believe. How about this image of cousin Eddie standing outside with the pumping the waste, the gray water waste, with his cigar and his hat and his shorty bathrobe. I mean,
The greatest Halloween costume ever.
The greatest.
And Uncle Lewis lighting a match. Uncle Lewis lighting a match.
That's right. That's right.
And that comes back to Tripp wears that to the office sometimes. His bathrobe.
What is it?
You wear that
The
in the office sometimes.
I
Your
wear
short
what?
bathrobe, and you wear that.
Oh yeah.
That's my kind of office.
And I drive my motor home to work.
Casual Friday.
Casual every day. All right, guys, hang tight. We're gonna roll the credits. Thanks again. This was Booze Dancing, Entertainment Network. What we watch when we drink with the guys from Barrel Craft Spirits. Gentlemen, thank you again. Oh, by the way, Joe, congratulations on your daughter's wedding.
Oh, thank you.
Coming up. Sure.
Okay, so hang on, folks. I'm going to roll the end credits.
Yep.
Cheers, lads.
Cheers.